Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and we just finished reading Lady Boss by Jackie Collins. I'm going to be giving my final thoughts on this book today. I know I ended up skipping the discussion questions for the last two sets of chapters, but honestly, I don't feel like those last two sets needed discussion questions, and it was just easier for me to just go straight to my final thoughts. I did get a little bit behind from being sick and then other things. My dog was sick, so it just I just decided to skip those, but I will be giving my final thoughts, and there are whole book discussion questions over on my website if you're interested, and my answers will be over there as well. Before I get into my final thoughts on this, though, I thought since my schedule's kind of a little bit different and not as regular, I thought I would just talk about the books I would like to read in February. This is not a set TBR. These are just books I would like to get to. The only one that I really just is going to kind of be set is obviously the book of the month, Mother of Pearl, by Melind Haynes, where you're going to be reading this one. There are chapter sets, and those are broken down. And then each Monday we'll be doing discussion questions on this one, barring any illness or anything like that. And I think that's completely doable for this book. There's not as many chapters. I think there's like 40 chapters, I want to say. Um, I could be mistaken, but I think it's around 40 chapters. Yeah, with the epilogue, that's 40 total. So, anyway, this is what we are going to be reading as our book of the month for February. Really, really excited. I hope you will participate with us. Go ahead and get a copy, read along, and then you can obviously take the discussion questions as seriously as you want to. Or if you're not reading this, I'm hoping I can do discussion questions that won't have very many spoilers. And so if you're not reading along with us, I hope you will still check out those videos and kind of think about the discussion questions and how they relate to today's society. So really, really excited to be reading this. The other book I really want to prioritize this month is my ABC Author Challenge book. I've been talking about this one quite a bit, and that is The Tenants of Time by Thomas Flanagan. This book is such a beast. I have completed the first part of the book, so I'm done with part one, and there's about 600 pages left to read. There's 820 pages total. So I made a dent in it, but then I got sick, and then I was struggling with insomnia. And this book is so dense, and you really kind of need to be present while you're reading it. And so I just haven't been able to do any more with this book with everything that's going on. So I really want to finish this one in February. And that's because if I don't get this one finished, I'm kind of going to get behind, and I don't know that I'll be able to complete this challenge this year, which is one of my main goals. So this is the next book I'm going to be prioritizing, and I'm really hoping I can get read this month, but we shall see. And then I also need to kind of prioritize my 25 Days of Bookmas books. So I've already read two. The next one is called Blood and Fire by Shannon McKenna. And I think this one is a good one for February, kind of more of like a steamy romance type. And yeah, I'm hoping to get to this one, but I'm not as concerned about this one than I am, getting Tenants of Time read. So if I get to this one, great. If I don't, I'm not all that worried. I think I can catch up fairly easy in the coming months. So we'll see if I get to that one. And then I have all the books that would have been for my weekly reads. I'm no longer doing that, but I still kind of want to not necessarily read a book a week, but at least complete the number of books if I was still doing that. So I need to play catch up because obviously the last 2 weeks in January I didn't complete those books. So I'm already reading this one, and that is The Glass Dragon by Irene Radford. Not very far in. I just started it yesterday. I think I started it. I'm filming this on Sunday, and so I think I started this on Friday night. But I only read like a chapter or so, and then I read a few more chapters yesterday. This one, I'm really enjoying it so far, and I think it'll be fairly easy to get through if I just sit down and read it. I haven't been doing that, so I've been reading it here and there in between doing other things. So I should be able to complete that one within this next week though. So then the other book I was going to read in January is The Other Daughter by Lisa Gardner. And so this is a thriller type book. Again, I think it'll be fairly easy to get through. It's about 400 pages. And yeah, excited to read this one, see if it's something I'm going to keep or not. And then I have a bunch of romance books for February. I had already chosen these out for my weekly read before I kind of got sick and kind of got behind and decided I kind of needed to change my schedule a little bit. Some of these are a little bit shorter, like more dime store type romances. So the first one is Where There's a Will by De Leclerc. This one's super short, so I'm really hoping I can knock this one out fairly quickly. I should be able to read it within the evening, so I'm not too concerned about that. The next one is Cross My Heart by Carly Phillips. I'm pretty sure I've read this one before, but I don't really remember. So either way, I need to reread it and decide whether I'm keeping it or not. And then I have Sweet Blessings by Jillian Hart. Not really sure how this one ended up on my shelf. I think this one was one that, somebody gifted. So excited to read this one. This one's also a little bit shorter. Should be easy to get through. And then the last one is Tempting by Susan Mallory. So really excited to read that one as well. I like the cover. It's pretty fun. So and then I'm still working my way through the Dresden Files. Right now I am on, I think it's the 7th book, which is Dead Beat. I have started this one as well. These ones I typically can knock out within a day if I kind of focus on them. And since I've already started it, I should be able to read this one pretty easily. And then I would also like to at least start, if not completely read the next one, which is called Proven Guilty. So we'll see if I'm able to do that one. Those ones, though, are lower on the priority list. I want to keep making my way through the Dresden Files, but obviously I'm going to prioritize what I'm reading over the other books I'm reading over those ones. So but those are all the books that I'm planning on reading this month if I'm able to. And then I also do have my Throwback Thursday books. I have 3 different horse series from my childhood that I'm planning on trying to read this month. The first one actually should be super easy. I should actually have a video out this Thursday for that one. They're aimed for younger children, and there's only 6 of them, and they are like tiny, tiny. So those ones shouldn't be a problem. The other 2, they're not very long, but there are several of them. One I have 9 books, and one I have 15 books. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, I'm not going to push myself. I'm just going to kind of read them as I go along, and then once I complete the series, I will talk about them on Throwback Thursdays. So I think that catches you all up as far as what I'm planning on reading for the month of February. Quite a few books. I think it evens out to about 11 books, I want to say. There's 5, and then 10, yeah, 11. So 11 books total plus my Throwback Thursday books, which I'm not counting. So yeah, I have quite the list to read this month, and of course it's a shorter month, so you lose a couple days there as well. But I think it's doable, and I should be able to knock out some of these books really quickly. So let's go ahead now and talk about Lady Boss by Jackie Collins. So the premise of this book, it's kind of hard to describe. The main plot line is Lucky is buying Panther Studios. Her husband's an actor there, and he's complaining because it's very, very poorly run, and he's contracted to do several movies, and he's just not happy there. So she decides she's going to buy the studio and make it great again. That's the main premise of the book. But there's several like subplot lines. It jumps around between several different characters, and so you have different plot lines going on throughout the book. And so yeah, that's kind of gets a little confusing knowing which one is kind of the main focus, because there really isn't one. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my CAWPILE rating real quick, and then I will talk a little bit more about the book itself. If you're interested in the CAWPILE rating system, the original creator is linked down in the description below. You can go check out her channel and learn more about it. But for characters, I gave the characters 7, which is the low end of really good. I thought, especially in the beginning, I enjoyed the beginning of the book a lot more than I did the second half of the book. But I did enjoy the characters. Like, you had a good sense of who they were. There could have been more depth there, certainly, but you had a good sense of who these characters were. Like, you got a good impression of them. So that's why I gave it a 7. Atmosphere, I gave a 6. I really did not enjoy the atmosphere of the book. Um, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it fit for the book, certainly. But I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it, and I don't think there was a lot of depth to the atmosphere, so that's why I only gave it a 6. Writing, I only gave a 6. Again, I thought it was fairly well done, but there was just some things, and especially in the second half of the book, I just really didn't enjoy. So that's why it kind of got dropped down. Plot was also 6. There was so much going on that the plot lines weren't as clear as they could have been, and so that's why it kind of got dropped down a little bit. Intrigue, I did give a 7. I was kind of intrigued by what was going to happen with these characters and such, especially in the beginning of the book. So I think if the beginning of the book hadn't been as well done as it was, that would have gotten dropped down for me. And then logic, I gave a 6. Again, there's just so much happening. And then enjoyment, I only gave a 5. It's just, I I did enjoy the first half of the book, but there were some things that kind of ruined my enjoyment of it. But again, it kind of worked for the book, so I don't hold those things against the book too much. But the second half of the book, it just all kind of fell apart for me, and so that's why I only gave it a 5. That's the average rating of 6.14, which does equal a 3-star rating. And looking at my other 3-star books, I do agree. I probably enjoyed it about as much as I did those other books, just in a different way. And it is slightly lower as far as average rating than my other 3-star reads. So I do think that's kind of fair transferring it to a star rating, that it's a 3-star read. So that's the CAWPILE rating system on the book. And so, yeah, we'll go ahead and talk. I'll try to keep it generic at first, and then I'm going to kind of get more into spoiler territory, but I will warn you before I get there. So, in the beginning of the book, you have Lucky, and she is trying to buy Panther Studios, but Abe Panther wants her to go undercover and kind of learn, what's happening, why she's undercover. And so that's the main part of the book. Like, about half of the book is her, spending time at Panther Studios undercover and kind of learning the layout and kind of the players and everything like that. And I really enjoyed that part of the book. I thought it was well written. Even the things I didn't like fit for the book. So, just because it wasn't to my personal taste, it made sense for the book. And I could kind of overlook those things, which was kind of the crude language. Like, it was very kind of vulgar and crass and a lot of cussing and such. And then the treatment of women, they were treated kind of as, they were objectified very much and just kind of treated in a derogatory manner. But again, that kind of fit for the book and kind of why Lucky was coming in and what she kind of wanted to do going forward. So that all fit, and I could kind of overlook it, even though it was kind of distasteful to me personally. I mean, it's just distasteful in general. So, and I can see why my mom enjoyed this book so much, like why this is her favorite author, and why this book in particular is her favorite. Like, it made perfect sense knowing my mom, and such. Like, I understand it completely. So, like I said, I really did enjoy the first half of the book, especially when she got to the point where she was no longer going to be undercover and such, and she kind of did some things. It was like, yes, because she kind of was able to kind of stick it to some of the guys, which I loved. So that's the first half of the book, and then the second half of the book is her buying it and kind of trying to turn it around. And I just thought the second half of the book, the pacing went way too fast and it wasn't as in depth. And I've been noticing that with some of the other books I'm reading. Like, the first half of the book is the either really slow pace, and then the second half of the book is really fast paced. Like, it's not equal. And I don't know. It's kind of frustrating because, like, you could have spent less time on that first half of the book and more time on the second half to fully develop that second half, or vice versa. And so it's kind of really frustrating sometimes when they do that, because it's like you could have balanced it out a little bit better. And then you're not just following Lucky though; it jumps around between several different characters, which I don't like in general. I think it gets way too confusing, especially as many characters as were in this book. There was a lot of characters, and it jumped around between a lot of them as well. So it's not that there was just a lot of characters, it was jumping around between all these characters. And that makes it really hard for me to enjoy, because it's like it's harder to follow. And so you had different subplots with the different characters. And overall, actually, it wasn't that hard to follow, but it was just a little bit frustrating because it's like I just want to follow the one character. Or, if you want a couple subplots, then a couple of the other characters. But I don't think it was necessary to jump around as much as she did between characters. So that was a little bit frustrating for me as well. And then in the end, it was just kind of rushed, I felt, as far as tying up, what happened. So like you had this big build up and then it just kind of fell flat. And so that was a little bit frustrating because it didn't tie together. Like it did tie together nicely, but it was like too quickly. So it's like this perfect little bow. Okay, it's all tied together. Like we're done. And I would have liked a little bit more of the conclusion, a little bit more depth to the conclusion. So that was the other thing I did not enjoy about the end of the book. So overall, like I said, it was a solid read. I did enjoy it, but it's just the second half of the book kind of let me down in a major way, which was frustrating. And then I did not like how much it jumped around between characters. So now I think I'm going to get a little bit more into spoiler territory. And so if you want to jump off now, if you don't want to know the spoilers, you can certainly do so if you're interested in reading this book. Otherwise, stick around and, see what you think. But first, we have Lucky and her husband, Lenny. And they're married less than a year, which is fine. And I can't remember how long their courtship was, but it wasn't very long. And so you have them and they're crazy about each other, which is great. And you see, like, they're not tempted by, Lenny's in Hollywood and Lucky is a businesswoman. And so they're separated a lot, but neither one of them are tempted by the people around them. And so you see kind of this solid relationship, and they're not worried about each other either. And so you see the solid relationship in the beginning, and then it all just kind of falls apart because they're not communicating with each other. And that kind of more on Lucky. Like, she's not treating Lenny as a partner. And so Lenny is kind of overly dramatic at times. Like he storms off the set and completely disappears, doesn't tell anybody where he is. Because he's mad because Lucky's supposedly in Japan, but at this time, of course, we know she's undercover, and he wants to spend time with her. He wants a baby, and she's like, "Yeah, we can have a baby, at some time," but she doesn't specify now. But he's like ready for a baby now, and so they're just kind of on two different pages. And so even though they're crazy about each other and such, like there's not really mutual respect there. Like, and so, at first you kind of get this impression that, oh, they're just a solid couple. And then you kind of see it all fall apart over stupid miscommunications and such, and not being on the same page and not talking to each other. Like, they're not treating it as a partnership. Lenny wants one thing, she wants another, and they're not communicating. And then they're also not respecting, who they married. Like Lenny, it's like you married a businesswoman. You have to make some allowances for that. And so that was kind of a little bit frustrating. And, then all of a sudden Lenny decides, okay, he's ready to forgive. But it's just a little bit toxic in some ways, but then in others, it's like you have this solid foundation, and even when they're separated, they're not tempted by anybody else. Like Lucky, you know, Cooper is coming on to her, and she's just like, "No, I'm married," even though they're separated. So you see like some solid, bits of relationship there, and then in other instances it's like a complete create like it's just a complete mess. And so I don't know. And the way it tied up, like all of a sudden they have two children, and you know, Lucky's still the amazing businesswoman and such. So I don't know. It was just tied too neatly all of a sudden, and it's like those issues don't just go away, so anyway, so you have them, and then you have Mickey Stoley and Abigail, who Mickey runs Panther Studios before Lucky buys it, and Abigail is a Panther's granddaughter, and you have their daughter Tabitha. And that whole situation, so Mickey has a mistress, and then he gets caught and arrested in um like a brothel essentially. And so you kind of have that, and that plot line of what's going to happen between them. Is Abigail going to stay with them, or is she not going to stay with them? And so that's kind of just a whole nother thing. And then in the end they do stay together, and I don't know, I thought it kind of made sense for the characters, but it was also kind of a mess. And I don't really know how to feel about that whole situation. Then you have Eddie and Leslie, and Eddie is a drug addict, and Leslie used to work for Madame Loretta, so she, used to work like in the brothel. I know that's not what it's called, but I'm using that term because it's a nicer term than anything else I could use and what was kind of used in the book. And so, that whole situation, like you see the strength to Leslie, but then she does things that kind of go against that character, which is really frustrating. Like, th- Eddie ends up hitting her, and she decides she's going to leave, um, because nobody leaves. Like, so you don't see that struggle. It's just like, nobody hits me. Like, I'm done. But then she ends up going back. And so it's just, I don't know. It's just that character was a little wishy washy. And I know it's not as straightforward as I'm just gonna leave, but just how that whole situation played out. But in the end, it did kind of work out for Leslie, I think. In the end, I'm not gonna kind of spoil that one. And then you have, what else do we have? Venus Maria and her lover, who is Martin, who's married to Dina, so they're like a high class couple from New York, and then he's having an affair with this actress, okay? And so you have that whole plot line, and Lucky's brother ties into that one. And you also have the plot line of Venus Maria and her brother, who's kind of selling her out to the tabloids and such. So you have like a whole mess there as well. And that one, I liked how it ended, but I didn't like how it ended. And I think, you have Dina, and what happened in the end. I'm going to try not to spoil it too much, but, that one was kind of, that plot line was started in the beginning of the book because she comes to Stephen, who's Lucky's brother and is a lawyer. She comes to that firm and talks about them representing her if should she do something. And so you have this plot line, and she's gonna do this thing from the very beginning of the book, and then at the end it kind of twists, which I don't understand that. Especially we get like a little glimpse into Dina's past, and I'm just like, I don't understand that twist, how it twisted. That didn't really make sense to me. And again, I think if it had been developed more, it could have made sense. But because of everything else going on, and then this, how it rushed at the end, you didn't get that development. So that was really frustrating for me. And then what happens after that whole situation did kind of make sense, actually, based on, um you got the clues leading up to it, so it did kind of make sense. But again, you were supposed to have Venus and Martin so in love, and then it kind of all turns on its head. So that one, it kind of made sense because you got the clues, but again, you didn't see that full development, and so it kind of lacked a little bit there. And then you have Gino, who ends up marrying his mistress, And that one, I don't know, it didn't really make so much sense to me either because you kind of had Gino presented a certain way. And then he talks about, well, I'm old now and I want to settle down, which I guess can make sense. But again, I think it just lacked development for it to fully make sense. And I did like how Abe's story kind of tied together in the end. I thought that tied together really, really nicely. And so I do kind of like that one because you saw that loyalty there between him and Inga from the beginning. Although it's like, why now? Like, why wouldn't you just kind of stay the course? But I think it was just another way to kind of stick it to Abigail and Primrose as well. So I did like how that one tied together. But overall, with how everything tied it together, it was just very rushed. And because there was so much going on, all those different plot lines weren't fully developed, which was kind of a shame as well. Um, but I did like, the main premise of the book and how Lucky, went undercover and learned all these things she needed to learn about the different players and such, and used that knowledge to help her out when once she took over and went forward. And I liked how she handled it and was able to turn the studio around by doing like laying down a hard line and leaving the choice up to the people. Like she didn't breach her contract with them because the choice is up to them. But if you're staying, you're going to do this. So the choice is yours. You either do this or you can leave. I'm not going to hold you to your contract, but those are your choices. And I thought that was done very well. And you did see, with some of the actors like Johnny Romano, you saw that kind of turn around and such, which I thought was pretty nice. The other thing I didn't like though was the whole Johnny Romano and Warner, who was Mickey's mistress originally, because she was with Mickey for like 18 months. And then she jumps to Johnny, and then in the ending, they were supposed to get married and such, and it just kind of flips there. And I don't know, I think you were presented this character and then in the end she got very shallow, um which didn't stay true to the character that was presented in the beginning. I think, I mean, you again got glimpses of that, but it just wasn't developed, and so it kind of betrayed the character you saw in the beginning. So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on the book. Like the way things kind of played out I thought was rushed and everything, and some of the things I didn't agree with because you just didn't have that character development for it to make full sense. So, but anyway, overall I thought it was a pretty solid read, and I do think it's kind of opens up discussions because it takes place in the 80s and the AIDS epidemic, and it brings that up multiple times, which opens up the discussion for real life issues and such, and even how women are treated in Hollywood today. um it opens up that discussion. And so I think there was some important points to take from the book, which I was able to use obviously for my discussion questions. But, at the same time, I kind of got disappointed by how it ended. And I wish, there hadn't been so much going on because I think it could have been so much better if there wasn't as much going on and there weren't multiple characters that you were jumping around and subplots that you were jumping between. I think it could have played out a whole lot better. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave it here. I think I've been rambling long enough. Like I said, I hope you will join me as I read Mother of Pearl by Melind Haynes for February. Again, the breakdown is in the description below, along with links of where you can pick this up. And that's it for today. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.